The idea here is to show you, honestly, just how easy it is. I mean, this stuff has gotten so easy to do. It's just a few steps. You just have to know what to look for. That's the most important thing. And once you kind of know the names of what things are called, and it'll start to make a lot more sense, and you'll be able to, Google this stuff on your own and figure out how it works. So, how many people here are Unity developers currently? Okay, cool. How many people here have never touched Unity before? How many people here have played with Unity a little bit but are still, trying to get better at it and stuff? Okay, cool. So that's about what I was expecting. So we got a good mix here. Again, I'll be starting from the absolute beginner stuff. So for the first 30 minutes or so, the people that have played with Unity a little bit before, try not to fall asleep. But it's honestly, I'm gonna try to keep it fun. So it's gonna be, it should be fun for everyone. So it should be something for everyone here today. All right, cool. So that's 6 o'clock. So yeah, welcome to Learn Unity and XR Development for Beginners. My name is Philippe. I'm an AR, VR developer. I run the Anyworld community here in the city. I'm also a co-organizer of the Unity NYC community. So that's us right there. So between our two meetups, we host the majority of the Unity meetups in New York City. I also run a company called Anyworld. So I was showing this earlier. We're a VR and AR studio here in New York City. We worked on numerous AR and VR projects, numerous brands that we've worked with, and etc. And yeah, that's me. So in any case, I'm just gonna go ahead and get started, right? So we're gonna start with the basics of Unity. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna take this down for now. I'll minimize it. Let me know if anyone still needs the Wi-Fi information. But what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna open up my Unity Hub. Now, if you don't know what that is, if you just Google Unity Hub, it is a really great Unity feature that got released semi-recently. What it allows you to do is allows you to manage multiple versions of Unity and all your projects and everything in one. For the beginners, it's basically over time you'll see as you work on multiple Unity projects, sometimes you need an older version or a newer version. So Unity Hub kind of just lets you use all of that. Now for absolutely your first time running Unity, you're probably not going to see it like this. You're probably going to see either the Learn section show up or your installs. Now it'll probably ask you to activate an account. Now Unity is free, so I mean 100% free. They have paid versions, but for any user, you could just activate it with just a Unity account. Just make one with an email and then activate a free license and personal, I think it's called, and you're good to go. And you can start using Unity. I'm going to be using Unity 2019 for this demo that we're going to be doing first. But any version of Unity, in 2018 should work. LTS means long-term support. So I usually keep a version of that here as well. But yeah, in any case, I'm just going to go ahead and start a new project. So the way that you do that, so once you open up your Unity Hub, you go to Projects, and let me just actually pull up our list of topics that we're going to be covering today. So we're going to be covering the Unity Editor, Assets, Materials, Components, Physics, 3D Sound, Spatial Audio, and then we'll get to VR implementation with an Oculus that I have here, and AR implementation with AR Foundation, and then we're also going to do audio AR with Bose AR. So I have all those here, and hopefully we'll be able to go through all of those today. Alright, so got my Unity Hub here. I'm just going to create a new project, and I'm just going to call it something like Unity Beginner. Okay, so I'm going to click Create. It's going to do its thing. Give it a little bit of time to import packages and all that good stuff. Recording's going on. Good. All right. So now your Unity might look a little bit different. So just to make sure we all have the same Unity editor, over here on the top right, there's a layout button. So I'm just going to click default right there. So we have the default layout. Now I have the dark skin, which comes with Pro. It's just lighter on the eyes, but Unity Personal comes with like the gray with the light skin. And again, it's the same exact program. There's no Pro features that we're going to be using today that are specifically Pro or anything like that. So just if your Unity looks slightly different, don't worry about it. It's just a different theme. All right, so we have an empty Unity project here. So from here, I'm just going to kind of explain to you what each component of the editor here is, right? So the first one you might notice is this one here in the middle. This is the 3D view. So the first thing that I want you to do here is you can hold right click in this viewport and you'll notice that your cursor is going to change into a little eye. Now what happens here is when you hold right click and you start panning your mouse around, you're actually looking around in 3D space. Now Unity was meant to be a game engine when it first got made, so now it's evolved to be a lot more than a game engine. It's the primary development platform for AR, and it's like one of the top. I mean, it is like I think the top platform for VR, AR, and most games are now I think built in Unity. Most mobile games are also now built in Unity. It's a really ubiquitous platform, but it was built as a game engine, even though it does more than that now. And why that's important to know is it's the navigation itself is kind of built almost like a game. So the way that it works here in the middle, so while you're holding right click, you go into what's called free look mode. Now in free look mode, while holding right click, you can actually use the WASD keys to move around. And now if you've ever played first person shooters on PC before, you'll know that this is kind of like your locomotion, like you're moving around, just like in a video game basically. But this takes a little bit of practice, especially for beginners. So really get accustomed to kind of like moving around your viewport and seeing the objects that you have in 3D space. And yeah, it's basically you hold right click and WASD. Now you can pan around with middle mouse, and you can use the scroll wheel. There's a bunch of things you can do here, but the best way to navigate around is using this kind of like first person control scheme. So next up, you'll notice that there's two things here in the scene. So if you click one of these, like this one for example, the sun, this is a directional light. So what you'll notice is when you click an object in here, it actually also gets highlighted here on the left. So you'll notice if I click the camera, then the camera here gets highlighted on the left. So what happens is once you have an object highlighted here in the 3D view, it'll also get highlighted in here what's called a hierarchy. Now the hierarchy is every object you currently have in your scene. So this is the scene, and these are the objects in the scene. You can see them here visually represented. Now when you click something in the hierarchy, it'll also get selected in the viewport. So there's a connection there. Now the next thing you might notice, when you have an object selected, let's say the main camera, over here on the right is what's called the inspector. So whenever you have an object selected, what the inspector does is it gives you more information about the object you currently have selected. So if I select like the directional light, for example, here I have settings like color of light, intensity, what kind of shadows, and etc. So we'll get into some of these settings in a moment. And the same for camera. When you click it, there's some settings here like field of view, far and near clipping, and etc. But just remember that anything you select in the viewport, anything you select in the hierarchy, you set its settings here in the inspector once it's selected. Okay? So now the first thing that we could do here just to kind of demonstrate these 3D objects. So if I select this directional light, for example, and now what I can do is I can move it around by dragging it with these gizmos. You can rotate it around by selecting the rotate tool. So up here in the top left, you'll see move tool, rotate tool, and scale tool. So there's a few more here, but we'll only be going over these three. These are the most important. I've been using Unity for like 8 or 9 years now, and I really don't use these over here anyway. So I don't think you will need to either, but you can if you want. But if I click the rotate tool, for example, you'll notice that the gizmos change. So from the arrows for the move tool to these kind of like little hemispheres, these little circles, right? So the way that this works is if you drag by the middle here, you're actually dragging and rotating in every direction. Now this is kind of unwieldy because I'm rotating in every axis, so I don't really have precise control over this. So at any point I can just Control Z or Command Z to undo. But what you can do is you can actually rotate by the individual gizmos. So if I just rotate by this individual gizmo, then I'm only rotating in what's called that one axis. Now everything in Unity is in 3D space. So everything has an X, Y, and Z coordinate for position, and it also has an X, Y, and Z angle for rotation. So now what happens is you'll notice while I'm rotating this light, you'll notice that the rotation here changes. So in the inspector, so you'll see that the numbers change. Now you can tweak rotations, positions by dragging them around in the scene like this or rotating, or you can actually set them manually by typing in the values that you want here in the inspector. So if I go over to position, and I just make it 0, 0, 0, it's gonna put it down here at the origin of the scene. If at any point you get lost and you're just somewhere, you have no idea where you are, you could just double click on an object in a hierarchy and it'll center on it. So you can always find your way. Now for the rotation, same thing. If I just make the rotation X0, Y0, and Z0, and let's say this is like this red gizmo right here, I want to kind of rise the sun at a certain degree. You can tell which axis that is by looking at the color. So see here it's red. Now red is X. Now the way that I know that is over here in the top right. You see there's a little X by the red, there's a Y by the green, and then when I turn a little bit sideways the camera, the blue is Z, right? So if this is red gizmo and I'm putting the sun up, see right here it's 10 degrees. Let's say I can make the sun 45 degrees just by typing 45 degrees, and now we're at 45 degrees of horizon for the sun. So that's the kind of one-to-one relationship between the objects in the 3D world and in the inspector there, where you can actually change the values manually. Okay. All right. So that's just like the basics of the editor. Now the next step here is if you look down, there's this big area here, and now this is the project view, right? So the project view is basically all your files. So this is where you'll drag in your images, your pictures, or whatever, your sounds, music, 3D models, animations, videos, anything that you're using to build your XR project, you'll be pulling it into this bottom area here, right? So now let's do a really simple exercise. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new 3D object in the scene. Now Unity comes with some pre-made like 3D primitives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Game Object up here in the menu, 3D Object, and I'm going to create a plane. So if I create a plane, that plane should be made in front of my camera. Now I'm going to take its position over here in the inspector, and I'm just going to make it all zeroed out so we have it at the middle of our scene. If you lose your plane while you're doing that, just double click it and it'll focus right on it. So you'll never get lost in your viewport. So we have a plane and we have it kind of in the middle of our scene here. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to scale it. So I'm going to click the scale tool, and now you can scale in an individual direction just by dragging that individual direction. So I'm just going to undo that, and I'm actually going to scale by this middle here, and then you scale in all directions. So what I actually want to do here is I want to zoom out a little bit, and I'm actually going to make the scale manually here on the right side, 5 by 5 by 5. There we go. So we have a nice plane in the middle. It's white right now. There's nothing special about it. It's just an empty plane. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to pull in an asset from the internet, for example, like a texture, and texture this plane. So let's pull up our favorite web browser and just Google something like grass texture. Okay. You go to images. If you tick off seamless here, which is also a new thing that Google has been doing lately, seamless textures basically mean that they can be what's called tiled. So a seamless texture doesn't have like a noticeable edge when you put two of them next to each other. It's what it means by it's seamless. Like tiles, for example, are seamless. So just gonna pick any grass texture from here that looks good. Sometimes they take you to another website and you have to create an account and get it. But let's say I'm just gonna find like something like this one, and I'm just gonna right click here, open image in new tab. There's my image, and I'm gonna save it to the desktop. There it is. And I'm just gonna then take this grass texture and drag it into my project view here on the bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and now we have our grass texture is here in Unity. Now to put it on my plane, it's as simple as just dragging this grass texture and drag it onto the plane, and now we have grass on our 3D plane. Now this did a few things automatically. So when you drag a texture directly onto a 3D object, it created this folder here called materials. So if you go in here and you click this is what's called a material. So a material and a texture are different. So a material is a collection, could be a collection of textures combined to create one material. It has properties like how metallic it is, how shiny and smooth it is, and other things like tiling and etc. So you could put multiple textures in one material. But basically, yeah, the idea is that by dragging in that texture onto the plane, we automatically created a material. There's a manual way to do this as well, but we'll get to that step in a bit. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I can either click the material that was automatically created here, or I can click the plane in the scene. So everything's very visual. You want to change the properties of something in Unity, just click the thing you want to change, and here on the right side, you can see right here on the bottom right, here's the material. So I can expand that, and here are my material properties. So I don't want it to be metallic, and I don't want it to be smooth, because it's just grass. So it's just going to be a plane, and I'm just going to completely pull these sliders down. And the tiling, so I'm going to show you what the tiling does. So when I zoom in, if you're really close, like you would be, for example, in an XR experience, you're going to see a very blurry texture like this. So we can make that look a little bit better by tiling it. So I'm going to go to the tiling settings here, and I'm going to tile it instead of 1 by 1, something like 5 by 5. So now by tiling it, I'm actually multiplying it, and it looks like it has more detail. So when you're closer up, it's not as bad as it was before. You see that? Okay. So we have a nice little field of grass here. Now, next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in another type of object. So I'm actually going to grab a sphere. So I'm going to go to Game Object, 3D Object, Sphere. And if you create the sphere, sometimes it's created under your plane like this. Don't worry. You could always take its position and just make it the 0, 0, 0. And then here it is at the 0 point in our scene. On top, right on top of our light as well, which doesn't really make a difference because directional light doesn't actually have a position. It's just a rotational thing. It's a sun. But there's other lights that do have position. So we'll also get to that in a bit. So we have our sphere. I'm going to pull our sphere out of the ground, just kind of like have it floating like this, right? And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to preview my game window by clicking game here. So what the game window and the scene window are, so scene is where you're editing, game is what your actual player is going to look like. So when you run this game, when you run this experience, this is what the player is going to see. So what I'm going to do here in scene is I'm going to press play, and what's going to happen? Nothing. It's just going to float in air because we haven't told the sphere what to do yet. So we haven't given it a component. So, which brings us to our next step, right? So now that we have a sphere and we have it floating in air, let's say we want to just have that sphere fall with the power of gravity and collide with the ground and stop. So the way that we do that is with the built-in Unity physics. Now, Unity has a really robust physics engine built into it, and it's actually really easy to use. So all you have to do is you click your sphere, either in the hierarchy or here in the scene view, and then you go to Add Component in the inspector. So I'm going to explain real quick what a component is, right? So I'm going to click Add Component, and if you just clear this search, you'll see there's a bunch of things here. But you know, we're going to go to Physics. See a bunch of things here, but the one that we want is rigid body. And you can always find that just by typing something in this search. So you can just type a rigid body, and you add that, and now we've added a rigid body component to our sphere. Now, the way that Unity works, everything's based on what are called game objects and components. So the sphere is a game object which has a component, a few components attached to it, like a component that renders the sphere, the mesh renderer component, the sphere collider component, and now the rigid body component. So these are components that will define the behavior of our sphere and what it's going to do. So now that I've added a rigid body, now when I press play, the sphere will just fall. Nothing too crazy happening right now. It just falls like that, right? Now what if I grab this sphere? So again, and another important thing for beginners, when you press play to run your simulation, pressing pause doesn't stop it. It just pauses it. If you want to get out of it and go back to editing, make sure you unpress play. So you have to press play again to get out of it. So in my scene view here, now that I have this sphere and I have a rigid body connected to it, I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate the sphere a few times. So you can do this a few different ways. You can Control D or Command D for duplicate, and there's a sphere, and I can just pull it out. Or you can copy and paste. So you can, let's say, select a few spheres like this using Shift click. So you just Shift click them, or I think Command click them on Mac, and then just Control C and Control V, or Command C, Command V, just like copy and paste. And I'm going to paste them, and here's a bunch of spheres, and I'm just going to press play, and they're all just going to stack on top of each other neatly, like so. Now, the reason why it stacks so neatly, obviously, is because, I mean, this is like a perfect 0, 0, 0 position sphere. There is not even a single bit of offset on the side, so the spheres aren't falling off of each other. But if I go into my scene view right here, and I'm still in play mode, notice. So this is a live scene, but I'm editing it. So what I can do is I can just grab one of these spheres, just pull it out of there. So Unity allows you to change things inside Unity in real time while the simulation is playing. But the moment you unpress play, everything goes back to the way you initially set it up. Now this is by design, because think about it, if you run a game or any kind of simulation, unless your app supposedly is supposed to save all the settings, that's a whole other story. But usually when you close an app, when you start it again, you're back to like that baseline, whatever the initial setup was. And that's exactly how Unity works. So if you're playing around with this, try to have some fun and just kind of grab a few of these and just like kind of stack them up like that. What I kind of like to do is I like to grab one here in the middle, and I like to just start duplicating it, and you just kind of like have just some mayhem happening. And my computer can usually do a lot of these. So it's a whole lot of fun. And I just have lots of spheres just kind of going everywhere. And they're all falling off and just going into infinity. The moment they reach the edge, they fall off. Now this is all automatically being calculated by Unity physics. Now you can set things like gravity, speed of the physics, and etc. But just the default is 9.8. Just speed of gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared. Alright, so next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just delete these extra spheres. I'm going to stay with my one sphere, and I'm going to show you some more material stuff, right? So now let's say, I'm trying to think what kind of sphere material we could set. You know what? Let's leave the sphere for now. Let's do something else, right? So let's grab a cube. So I'm gonna do a game object, 3D object, cube, and again, it kind of got placed in a weird place somewhere underneath your plane. If it does that, again, don't worry. You can either drag it out, or you could just set its position to something like 0, 0, 0. Just bring it to default. I'm gonna pull up this cube here, and I'm gonna look for some more textures, right? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a wood texture, for example. Okay. So let's say I want to grab like one of these wood textures that kind of has that's a vector stock photo. I think this should be fine. So one of these wood textures that has some of these kind of like crevices. So I'm going to grab this one just by right click, open image in new tab. I'm going to drag it to my desktop. It might not be seamless, but that's okay. We're not going to be tiling this one. I'm going to grab that texture. I'm going to go to my assets folder here at the top, pull the texture in, and then drag that texture onto my cube. Okay, so here's my texture. I got some wood on this cube. Now I'm going to show you like a little trick that you can kind of use to add a little bit more detail to this wood in Unity. So what I want you to do is I want you to take that wood texture. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. I want you to take that wood texture and actually pull it in a second time. So we have another one of these, right? But for the second texture, I'm actually going to go into its texture properties just by clicking it, and then excuse me, and texture type, I'm going to go to normal map instead of default, like that, and I'm going to check this box here, create from grayscale, and then the bumpiness, I'm going to make that bumpiness really low, like 0.01. And instead of sharp, I'm going to do smooth. I'm going to scroll down with my scroll wheel and click apply. Now, what you'll notice is it kind of turned it purple. So I'm going to explain really quick what this is, right? So this is what's called a normal map. So what a normal map is, it gives a little bit of an illusion of depth, of bumpiness. So the colors in a normal map define which angle light is coming from and what depth, you know, the reflection of the shadows or the bumps will be. So we kind of created a normal map, what's called procedurally in Unity, just from using the same texture, but we're creating it from grayscale. So that's what this kind of like create from grayscale checkbox was here. Now what you can do with that is when I click my cube here and I open my material, I'm going to scroll down, and now you'll notice that there's only one texture assigned right here. It's the albedo. And when you click that, it'll just highlight it. So albedo is the color. Now, I want to add a normal map, so I'm going to drag this texture into the normal map slot right here. All right. Now, you might not notice the difference, but if I turn it off here and on, you can see that I'm actually modifying this kind of like bumpiness effect to it. See that? So let's keep that at 1. And when this is really pronounced is when you increase the smoothness. You'll notice this is how it was without a normal map with smoothness. See, even though it's wood and it's got like these kind of like crevices, there's no actual reflection going on there. But if I increase the bumpiness, you'll notice that, you see, we kind of have this effect now. And you can, of course, make that more drastic or less drastic. And then by changing these material properties like metallic and smoothness, you can actually tweak kind of like the look of your wood. So now our wood looks a little bit better. That's just like a little tip for how you can kind of just increase the quality slightly. And then what I can do is I can take these blocks of wood and I'm going to start copying them around. Actually, whoops, before we do that, I'm going to give them some physics. So I'm going to add component, rigid body, there it is, and then now I duplicate the cube with the rigid body on it. So I'm going to kind of make it like almost like a wall like this, kind of like almost actually going to stack them up, like kind of like I'm just going to basically just roll the ball through them. Like go. Okay, I'm gonna press play. There's my wall. Oops. Oh. let's make that a little bit more of a sturdy structure. So as you can see, like developing with Unity, it's a very visual and fun process. It's a what you see is what you get editor. Everything you're actually moving by hand. You're seeing things in real time. You're not like just kind of like guessing what it's going to look like. So let's try that again. It should stay still now. Why does it keep falling off of that end? I think one of my yeah, it's my physics is bugging out a little bit. I think it's the other side? This side, yeah, right? Whatever. Even if it doesn't stand up completely, I'll just show you what the idea here is. I think what it's doing is it's kind of just exploding slightly in the beginning, but that's okay. So what you can do is you can grab the sphere and just kind of like knock this wall apart. But that was like a little bit uncontrolled demolition. So boom. Now dragging your object around like this in the scene while it has physics isn't how you're actually going to be doing things in Unity. So what you can do in Unity is you can actually either script a behavior to move this, which we can do with, like, let's say if I hold a certain button, I'll make the sphere go forward. So we'll do that in a second. But before we do that, I want to show you another way, in your way, that isn't like, I wouldn't call it like interactive, but it's another cool feature that I think you might like to see that Unity is capable of. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to, so first of all, if you want to actually control your sphere in real time, you don't want to just have it be a rigid body. You want to check this box here, is kinematic. So what is kinematic means is even though it has physics, you're actually controlling the kinematics of the sphere. So you're moving it, it's not moving itself. So you noticed when it wasn't kinematic and I dragged it, it kind of flipped out all over the place. But when I check is kinematic, it'll move in a predicted pattern how I want it to move. It will not fall. Notice, so it's not being affected by gravity anymore. It's only being affected by my input. You see that? So any object that you want to have physics, but you also want it to basically be movable in real time, you want to check that is kinematic option. See that? And now it's kind of moving in a predictable way. Now, a way that you can actually animate things in Unity is you can actually do keyframe animation, which is, I believe it got released a couple of years ago, but it was a huge, useful feature, I think, in Unity. So the way that you open that up is you go to Window, and then here there's Animation, and then you click Animation right there. And you'll open up a window that looks like this. So this is the animation window. And it's a very simple but powerful tool to animate anything in Unity. So anything in the editor, any position, any rotation, even colors, even things in your scripts with keyframes, right? So now let's say I want to do that motion that I just did with the sphere, but I want to do it using an animation, not using my, manually, like with my hand. So I'm going to click my sphere while I have this animation window open. I'm going to click Create. So that's going to create a new animation. I'm going to name it something like Sphere Animation. Save. There's my timeline. So I'm going to click Record on the timeline here. Set the first keyframe, right? Then I'm going to move the timeline up. Set the second keyframe. And then now when I scrub the timeline, you see that? There's my animation that I just created. Now it's not going through the cubes because we're not simulating yet. This is just showing you how the animation works. So it's this record button here allows you to set these keys. You can set keyframes manually as well. And you can do more things than just rotation. You can do scale. position. You can do it. Let's say I set the first keyframe here and the second keyframe, maybe I scale it up so you can kind of like, so it'll look like it's growing. And if you want to slow it down, you can take the amount of samples. Where's this? Oh, did they change it? Oh yeah, you have to, they used to just be here. So now you click this little settings button and show sample rate. So you can actually tweak the sample rate, and a lower sample rate will be a slower animation. And you can always scroll out or scroll into this timeline. So let's say I put my samples to something like 15. There we go. Alright, so I'm just going to play this, see if it works. See? So it'll just keep kind of repeating that. I think I have a few cubes here that aren't rigid bodied for some reason. A few of these cubes are just not happy with me. Oh, there it is. Didn't I? I thought I duplicated the rigid body on all of them. Alright, now all of them should have that. And it should go through the middle. There we go. Oh, see, now it's acting like it should have in the beginning. I just missed the cube, so that's why I wasn't doing it right. There we go. Cool, right? So obviously now you can take, it creates some pretty complex animations in your XR project using this animation tool. You can combine anything like you saw me just do position and rotation, right? But let's say, you know, let's change color, for example, right? So let's say on this one cube, or maybe on the grass, why not, right? So on the grass, I'm going to create an animator. I'm calling it grass animator. There it is. So now having my grass selected, I'm going to click the record keyframe. I'm going to do samples again, 15. Scroll out. Oops. And I'm going to record. And then I'm going to set the color initially to white. And then I'm going to move this timeline up. And then let's say that I make that color like red. Something like that. See? So you can animate anything, even material properties. So you can, you know, animate like pretty much anything you can imagine. It's that easy to do. Very visual, very quick to reach a result. And again, any property is you're able to animate it. So even like more complex properties, like, you know, like the different material properties or even script values, you can even animate things like the amount of mass an object has, or you can go crazy with this. But yeah, so this is a way to kind of do some very basic motion, some basic behavior without having to script. So believe it or not, back in the day, people were creating entire sequences with just code, no timeline, no nothing. It was a nightmare. But with timeline and this animation feature, it's much easier to do now than it was before. Anyone have any questions so far, by the way? Am I going too fast, or is everything good so far? Yes, sir.
When I play this, can I play the animation in a loop?
Yes.
Is there a way to make it do it once?
There is. So the way that you do that is you actually, so select your object that has the animation, and then when you go down, your object should now have a component called animator. And if you look at the animator, it has a controller right there. So you can click that controller, double click it, and then it'll open up another window called animator. And then in here, I know this is like a, a bunch of steps. So here's your animation, sphere animation. So if you double click that, it'll have a loop time right here. And you can just uncheck that loop time, and then I think you should just do it once now. So here's my sphere, it goes in, and it stops. So, you know, again, you just click your object, go down to animator, click your controller, and then here's the animator controller, and then double click that, there's your sphere animation, and uncheck loop, and then we'll not loop. It's that easy. So, let's see where we're at. We got gotta check my list of topics that we're gonna cover. So we can still do a few more. So I did want to go over Asset Store. I don't have it here in the list, but let's just go ahead and do that, right? So this is one of the coolest features of Unity, in my opinion, and that's the Asset Store. So the Asset Store is a place where you can download high quality, low poly, sounds, textures, all sorts of things that you can use to build your projects, right? There's a lot of free stuff, there's a lot of paid stuff. You'd be amazed at how much free stuff there is, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for something like a barrel. I'm going to search barrel. There's a bunch of free barrels here, as you can see. You can always change the pricing to 0 or click free assets, and it'll only show you free stuff. So a bunch of barrels here. Let's say I'm going to pick, I like this like wooden barrel, for example. Barrels. So I'm going to click download here. It'll download it. Now it'll probably ask you to log in with your Unity account. It's the same Unity account that you use to sign up for Unity free. Downloaded it. I'm going to click import. This import dialog is going to come up. So this is all the files that are in that package. I'm going to click import. And you'll notice in the project view there's a new folder called barrels right there. And here are some barrel objects. So I pull out a barrel, and there it is. Nice, high quality barrel, even with multiple LOD, which is level of detail. So what that means is the further away you go from the barrel, it's going to pull in a lower quality barrel because you're not looking at it so close. So it's not going to take up so much rendering performance. And then what you can do is with this barrel, you can actually let me see here. I'm actually just going to use just the asset store. Any asset you want. Doesn't have to be a barrel. You could look for rocks or whatever. But what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to pull this barrel out of this sub-object, and I'll explain in a moment how this works, right? So any object here in a hierarchy in Unity can be parented to another object. So let's say all these cubes that I have here, right? Right now they're all kind of separate objects. If I wanted to move all these cubes, I'd have to select all of them and move them all together. But now what I can actually do is, let's say if I take all of these cubes and I parent them to the first cube over here. Oh, that's the issue. That's why it was exploding, because there was like 2 cubes inside of each other. So I'm just going to get rid of this one. So now if I took all those cubes and I dragged them into the first cube, and now you'll see kind of like they became like a sub-object of this. So now I can actually drag this parent cube and move all the objects together. So Unity works with this entire kind of child and parent object system. So you can parent multiple objects to one object, and then you kind of have them all as part of one like mega object that you can manipulate and do stuff with, right? So this barrel kind of works on a similar principle, but what it's doing, it's using a component called Lod Group, and it's pulling between a low detail version and a high detail version of the barrel inside of it. Now I just want the high detail version, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this barrel out of this object. It's going to say, oh yeah, you can't actually do that anymore like that. You have to do it like, how would you even pull that out nowadays when you do this like prefab editor? I think you should open prefab and then just like, I'll just delete the other one. I'll just delete the LOD group and I'll go back. Yeah, it's a little bit silly. Made it a little bit of an extra step. But the idea is, so for example, these barrels, I'll explain this. So they're what's called prefabs, which are prefabricated objects. So these barrels already have a material, They already have an LOD group. They have a few different things set on them, and it came like that from the asset store. So if you want to change them, you just double click it, and then here's your one object, and then you can set its values and tweak it, and then every object that is that barrel afterwards will get changed, right? So let me show you what I mean by that, right? So let's say here's the barrel that I want to work with. So let's say I pull in a few barrels here, like this, right? Now, let's say instead of wanting to change each barrel individually, I want to change all of them together. So since they're all part of the same prefab, I can actually go back to this original prefab, click this barrel, and I can change some values here, like maybe change its color or something like that. And then the way it should work is that when I go back, they'll all be that color. So that's kind of like the power of these nested objects and prefabs, is you kind of can save settings for an object, and then you can reuse it, multiply it, and just change in one place, and it'll change it in all of them. But you don't have to. You can actually change the individual objects as well. You have full control over that. So I have my barrels here, and what I actually want to do is I want to make them have physics as well. So if I click here, the barrel, it already has a mesh collider. It's already convex. I'll explain what convex and concave means. Basically, it's just like what you know it is in math and geometry. Convex object doesn't have like cavities. It's kind of like it's like let's say like you know, let's just do like a little. So this is this is a concave object, and then this is sorry, these lines. This is a concave object. This is a convex object. So when you have a concave object like this, the physics will not work inside of this unless you have them as multiple sub-objects. So if you create in a collider and you put convex, if you just check that box, what it actually does is it automatically just does this for you, and then it assumes that this is where the collision happens. So that's what it means when you set something to convex. If you want it to collide and have physics, it has to be a convex object or a collection of convex objects that make a concave object. So it's already convex. All I want to do then is select my top level here, add a rigid body, and this should now have physics. So if I just take these barrels and I'm going to stack them up kind of like I did these cubes. Now what's cool about the barrels is they'll actually roll when they fall over, because they kind of have this barrel shape, and the physics will account for that. So let's try that. Oh, wait a second. I think we should put the rigid body on the inside. Should have worked that way. Try that again. My apologies. Let's put it right in the path. There we go. So yeah, you have to put it on the same object that has the collider. So it has to be inside and not in the parent. So having done that, now I can duplicate them. And there we go. All right. Yeah, wait a second. What's going on here? My barrels are not behaving. Let's try that again. Something's weird here. Oh. I think it's because of the prefab. It's because of the Ah, you're right. You're so right. So he brings up a good point. So what static does, so when you check something as static, it has no motion, no physics, nothing. Typically in Unity, you create environment and you make it static. So by making things static, like let's say you have an entire city or mountains in the background, or etc., they'll never move. You check them off as static, and then Unity kind of like runs them at a higher performance because it can batch multiple static objects into one object. It's just like a performance thing. So yeah, unchecking that static, I could probably do this rigid body how I wanted to do it in the first place. Good catch, thank you. So this should work. It's weird how it did do that one barrel though, even though it was static. And there we go. So it's that easy to pull like a high quality asset from the asset store. You'll see that this already has like a nice little kind of like normal map and material on it, nice and high quality. And you could start prototyping like very, very quickly with Unity just by pulling in stuff from the asset store, for example. Yes?
Just a quick question. How do you get from downloading it to putting it on in the project?
So when you click import here, there's an import dialog that shows up. And then there's a little like import button that you can click. And then it should pull it into your project. And then in your project, down here at the bottom, a new folder usually gets made. And in this instance, it's barrels. So you just go into barrels, and yeah, you'll see 3 barrels in there. Cool. All right. So now the next thing, let's see if there's any other Unity basics that I missed. Everyone feel comfortable so far with all these concepts? Any questions so far about it? This is just like the basics of the editor. Now, but the basics are important when you're first starting with Unity. Knowing how to move things around, knowing how to import assets, knowing how to create materials. I'd say most important of all for beginners is to learn how to navigate your viewport like this, to be able to see things from different angles and be able to modify things comfortably. So now that we have like these basics down, right? So let's get down to some XR, right? So which one should we do first? I'd say let's do VR first, right? Okay. So I'm gonna just save this project. I'm just gonna do file save. So it's gonna save this current scene. Okay. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to my asset store again. I'm gonna close out of barrels. And what we're gonna be playing with first here is the Oculus. So I have the Oculus Quest here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the Oculus Integration package into Unity, and then I'm going to kind of just pull Oculus into this little barrel grass sphere project thing that I got going on. So what I'm going to do is go into Asset Store, search Oculus. The first one that shows up, Oculus Integration. I already have it downloaded. Hold on. What's going on here? I think I clicked the vendor. There we go. Oculus Integration comes with all the assets that you need to integrate Oculus into your project. So I'm just going to click import. It's going to usually take like about a minute or so. Alright, so here's all the assets. It's a bunch of them. I'm going to click import and just let it do its thing. So yeah, like I said, this usually takes about a minute or two. But yeah, if anyone has any questions in the meantime, feel free to ask. And again, as mentioned before, I'm actually going to be using the Quest as like a regular Oculus using the link cable. So I'm just going to plug it straight into my computer and it should show up as just a regular Oculus. Besides the little controller bug, but I'll explain that in a bit. Yes?
If imported assets are just dropping through the plane, what could be the cost of that?
If they're dropping through the plane, they don't have a collider, possibly. If you put a rigid body on them, yeah, but you also need a collider on it. So you can maybe put a box collider or a sphere collider or a mesh collider, which would work if you put it on the mesh. And if you use a mesh collider, make sure you check convex.
I got a question.
Sure.
When you're in play mode, how do you move an object? Is it different when
You have to click. You have to click in scene. Go back to scene, and then you can do it. So now for this section, I'll kind of just get into some of the higher level concepts of developing with VR. But the coolest thing I think about developing with VR in Unity is that you can actually just see what you're doing. So how you saw me moving the sphere in the editor, you can actually move it while you're wearing the VR. So you can actually wear the VR and do stuff like in VR. Or someone else could be doing it while you're previewing it. Someone could be building the world around you. Unity even has a VR editor now. So you can actually use the Unity features inside VR and edit your scene as well, which is super cool, especially for like architects, for example. Now there's a bunch of like sample stuff that comes with the Oculus integration. It's always good to look at like whatever platform you're working with, to look at their samples. All right, so now in my assets, it's going to say some things. There's an updated version. I'm going to say yes. It's going to say, you know, do you want this? Restart, upgrade, restart, and let it restart. So it usually asks that if there's a newer version, even though I just downloaded a version, but the version on the asset store probably wasn't the most up to date, so that's why they automatically detected that there should be an update. All right, my project has been reloaded. Oculus is installed. I'm going to go to my scene here, and we'll actually come back to the scene in a moment. Make sure you file save. But what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to navigate to my Oculus folder in here, and before I do that, I'm actually just going to plug in my Oculus. So USB Type-C cable. I'm going to be using Oculus Link, which is in beta right now, hence some of the bugs that you'll see, but the majority of it will still work. And when you deploy, it'll all work. So it's just a USB 3.0 with the Type-C connector. The Type-C plugs in to the Oculus Quest like so. Inside the Quest, when it turns on, just gonna turn it on. All right. It's gonna ask me, do you want to allow Oculus Link to do its thing? And I'm gonna say yes. So I'm gonna open up Oculus on my desktop. There it is. Devices. Alright, it's asking me to create a guardian. Just gonna do that. So for those of you that don't know what that is, it's basically what I'm doing here is I'm drawing the room for my play area. There we go. Cool. And confirm, and good to go. There we go, connected. Enable Oculus Link Beta. Access Rift apps while using your Quest. Plugged into your PC, you can disable Oculus Link. All right, enable. And now it's actually going away from being a mobile device on here, and it's actually becoming a full-fledged VR plugged into my computer that I could develop with. So it's booting up, and almost. It's taking so long. Works fairly well for a beta, but of course on stage. Let's try it again. Huh? Showed up as connected. Enable. Okay, let me just test it out. So, in my Oculus folder, there is a sample framework folder. Then there's usage, and then in there's a few sample scenes. So I'm actually gonna go for custom hands. So I'm gonna double click that scene, and it's gonna open up the custom hands scene. There it is. It's gonna do its thing. All right, let's see if this works. So press play. Nope. Let's try to restart it. Let's try this again. Why does this always happen? I was just doing this like an hour ago. Yeah, it's not even about that. It's like when you plug this in with the link, it just shows up like your Oculus Home, like on your computer. But it was just showing as black. It's asking me to confirm Guardian. I'm gonna confirm it. Actually, you know, maybe it's too big of a Guardian or something. Just make a smaller one. There we go. Confirm. All right, so open up Oculus on the computer. Plug in the link. No, it just shows, I see the Guardian, but it just shows as black. But what it should be doing is it should be taking me to Oculus Home here. Let me see if I run an experience or something. Oh, yeah. I don't think I have any experiences on here. It's probably have the home one. Oculus Home. Yeah, let's give it a good old reboot. Or is it now not doing oh, I'm already connected. Okay, cool. Alright, so let's try this again. Get in. I'm gonna restart it here just in case. Alright. Plug it in. Oh, there we go. There we go. Nothing a good old PC restart doesn't help. So yeah, now I see the Oculus Home inside here, meaning I'm now in the Oculus desktop version. So now if I go back to Unity, I'm just gonna place this down gently. So open up my Unity Hub again. Unity Beginner is the project we were working on. Get a little bit of time to start. Anyone here own a Quest? An Oculus Quest? Yeah? Anyone else? You guys like it so far? It's good? Hmm? Now you can plug it into your computer with Link, yeah. Yeah, they're gonna release the 10-foot cable soon. Alright. So here's our scene. I'm gonna again go to Oculus, sample framework, usage, and in here I'm gonna go for custom hands, the scene. I'm gonna double click that. It's gonna open up this custom hands scene. Just gonna zoom in here. So these are the hands that we're gonna have. So now if I just press play, should be seeing what I'm seeing in there. Let's see. Let me set my head here. That. Unity loading, it says in here, and there we go. You guys see that? So here I am in Unity. Here's my Oculus controllers. It does the index finger when I touch like this. When I click down, it does like a grab. Here's grip, and when you hold all of them together, this is like a fist. So you have full control here like this, right? So now I'm going to show you how we could take this basic scene. Now you see how fun this is, so you can actually in real time preview what you're doing. This is probably one of the funnest things about developing with VR, is that you're actually playing while you're developing. A lot of VR developers, you'll actually see them just kind of like this, with the thing on their head, and just like working on the computer, so they can just pull it down anytime they need to see what's going on in there. So that's kind of what I'm gonna do right now. So what we're gonna do here is I'm actually gonna take the scene. So I'm actually gonna make this camera rig, these custom hands. Let me see where I can find them. And now you can hear the Oculus stuff. So I think maybe there's any other settings to do in here besides. I'm just gonna drag this OVR camera rig and save it into my assets here. So I'm gonna do this is the original prefab. So I'm saving these objects from the scene as they are to pull them into my other scene. So then I'm gonna go into my scenes, sample scene, don't save for now. So this is where we were before, right? So I'm gonna take my OVR camera rig and I'm gonna put it like kind of like in front of these barrels. This old camera that I have, I'm gonna disable, and then I'm gonna take my custom hand left, custom hand right, and let's try that. All right, so yeah, that's VR now. I think I'm a little bit too far to, and I don't have teleportation set up in here. So what I'm actually going to do is in scene, so this is while I'm wearing the headset, I'm going to move the camera rig a little bit closer as if I'm walking closer. Or I might move it a little bit closer even. And I'm going to show you, so I'm going to put this on, find my hands, okay, all right. I think the scene wasn't configured properly. The settings. Let's see here what we got. Custom hand left. Custom hand right. Pull the camera rig in. That sound that you hear, that's the Oculus Home. It's just like a living room setup inside the Oculus. Nope. So sometimes what will happen is when you pull stuff from a sample project, you don't pull it in with all of its settings. So let me just save this. Custom hand. So one way to make sure that you're pulling in an object with all of its settings, if there are 3 objects and they all have settings that are like set on each other, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty object. You can call this like VR or something like that. And I'm going to pull these 3 objects here, and I'm actually going to make them child objects of this VR object. And then that VR object I'm actually going to make into a prefab by pulling it down here. So now if I go, it should work. So let's see here. Go back to my sample scene and pull in this VR object. It's got all of its settings saved in, and let's say move this back a little bit. Let's see. Hopefully the hands are gonna be there. You know something. Sometimes these hands have some issues, especially on the Quest. Let's see here. So it's, for some reason, they're not in front of my camera, but they should be. Not sure why. As you can see, they're kind of very far, actually. What I'm going to do, instead of disabling the main camera, maybe try deleting it. Let's try this again. Troubleshoot this in a second, but what we can actually do, so I can demonstrate what I was trying to do, is instead of pulling in their stuff, which I might have missed a few settings, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pull my stuff into their scene. So I'm going to call this my scene. I'm going to drag all these objects. I'm going to save this as a prefab. I'm going to go into usage, custom hands, make sure it works in here. Here are my hands, and then I'm going to take my scene, drag it in here. So there's my scene right on top of theirs. We do not need their light. Our light's fine. Let's try this again. Okay, I think I'm inside here. Let me get out. So, alright, let's try that again. So, what I was saying before, right now I don't have teleporter set up. We'll look at that in a second, but what I can actually do, so since I can't reach these objects, but I want to start interacting with them, I'm gonna modify myself here in real time. So there are my hands, there's my camera rig. You're gonna drag it forward a little bit, like something like that, and go back to game. And then, so if I just reach out to it like this, it won't do anything. But if I make a fist, I can actually, and then I should be able to, oh yeah, so I'll show you how you can grab these later. But as you can see, hopefully I'm not gonna hit a monitor in here or something. That's the monitor right there. There we go. So yeah, very easy and fun to kind of make something interactive. Now, if I wanted to take this a step further, and let's say this barrel here, if I want to make it grabbable, so there is a VR script that comes with the Oculus stuff called Grabbable. So I'm just gonna type in grab in the search where I do add component, and I'm just gonna do OVR grabbable. There it is, it's grabbable. Hopefully I think it'll do that in real time. If not, we might have to restart. And yeah, yeah, I think I might have to restart the scene. So I'm gonna go back out of it and add OVR grabbable to these middle barrels. Okay. So I'm gonna press play. Again, I'm too far. Gotta get that teleporter in. Get my OVR camera rig. Move it a little bit closer. There we are. Yeah. My hands. So I'm grabbing it, but it's like in me because it's really big. But yeah, the idea is, whoa, stop. You can like kind of, should be able to like throw it, but I think what I'm missing here is there is no rigid body attached. Ah, I see what's the problem. So our rigid body, our grabbable, I put it on the inside object, not on the outside. So you can always read the little console log here. It says error. It says there is no rigid body attached to barrel 1 game object. So I was putting it inside here, whereas it should be outside here where the rigid body is, because that's what it's expecting to get. So I'm going to do grabbable, OVR grabbable, same here, OVR grabbable. So the rigid body is on the parent. So the OVR grabbable should be on the parent. That's just how the script works. Doesn't have. I mean, they could have made it work under, but that's just how they did it. Yeah, that's why it says the error there. So it's expecting a rigid body on the parent. So typically you want like your script, your rigid body, your collider all on the same object, but sometimes that's not the case. But if it doesn't like it, it'll usually say something. And it might be a little confusing. So now I should be able to. Wait, is it this one? Oh crap! I think it's I see. So see, now it says another error. So now it says grabbables cannot have 0 grab points and no collider. So that means it wants a collider on the rigid body itself. So what I'm gonna do here is just gonna give it a like a capsule collider. I don't know if that'll make any sense. You can do like, yeah, let's try. All right, let's try like that. So grab points, and then I'm pulling in that inside object that has the collider in it. Now this is kind of like how it usually is with XR development. You see, you try something, you put it on, there's a bug, you take it off, you read the error message, you come back in, you tweak it, and then there we go. So now I can, kind of like, it's a little bit big. I might like actually make some smaller barrels to do this with, but as you can see, you can kind of, throw them and interact with them. Should be able to actually come out here. Oh, not enough mass. That's okay. So yeah, you can change the mass of any object, and then when it hits the other objects, it'll kind of like all collapse and stuff. Yeah, so I'd say this is a good point to take a little break. Let's take like a 5-10 minute break, and then we'll like look at a few more of these samples that they have in here, and then we'll switch to AR. Yeah. And let me know if you have any questions or anything so far, or if you want to try this in here and see what it looks like. So you're welcome to. Check it out. I think it might be in that direction though. So the grab is like this kind of grip button.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so bizarre. Very cool.
So just careful here. Might want to go a little bit left.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I see the safety is coming in too. That's pretty cool.
So it's like if you let go of the grip, and then get it, and then grab it. There you go.
Look. Very cool.
It's a very big object, yes. So it's a little bit unwieldy.
It's cool. It really looks good.
Do you want to try it?
Oh, sure, I just have a question.
Sure.
What about the hands? Like, do you have to do anything with the hands? Like, to tweak it to make it like, go better or something?
So yeah, what's happening here is I think this object's just really huge. So like, you know, let's say if I just make a smaller version of it, it should be a lot better for grabbing and throwing. It's also kind of annoying how to do it in VR. Like this one should be a lot better. Let's see if I grab it. See, now I can actually kind of play. I can actually kind of juggle it, sort of. Yeah. Just, you know.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, but it's all kind of a matter of physics, and obviously like, oops. Something wrong?
Maybe it's this.
Weird. Yeah, it's mainly how Oculus kind of does their grab script. There's other grab scripts as well that work pretty well. Hey man, how's it going?
Pretty good, how are you? You doing anything with the Bose AR?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, next. Yeah, after the AR Foundation and then Bose AR. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, I was wondering. So I remember at that Bose event that they had where they, what was it? Did the showcase of all the different programs.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about like a developer team kind of putting together.
Yeah, there's a developer program. If you have like Bose AR hardware, or if you have like an idea for something, like you can reach out to me if you have like an idea to build something like.
Well, because I kind of built like a, what was it? It was just a concept where it was like a kind of like a running game.
Okay.
I don't know if you like I showcased
With
it
Bose AR?
Yeah,
or?
with the Bose AR.
Okay.
Yeah, I showcased it at that Bose event that they had.
Which one?
The one they picked like 3 winners, like where you got like $50,000 and like money to start up and like an idea. They had,
The
like,
company one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and so.
Oh, I remember the game.
Yeah.
I remember the game, the one where you run like from the zombies.
Yeah.
I remember. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was wondering, but like you had mentioned then that you were putting together like a team of people, just like or a group of people, just like I guess.
Yeah. Do you wanna write down my email and just shoot me a note, and I'll put you like in our Discord channel. We're putting together like a little group. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah. Just or your phone. Yeah. Just if you want, just grab your phone and just shoot me an email.
Gotcha. All right,
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
For sure, man.
I'll do that. Thank you.
You want to try it?
If you're not, yeah. I
You
just,
just have to press play.
what is the,
Just be careful with this HDMI. Mine's like a little loose.
It's my first time trying this one.
What do you think?
I definitely want to get one, but
It's nice because it's portable. So it's,
I have a big head, do I? Yeah, let's try it. Oh, I see. It's a little stretching. Alright,
so it's should be behind. Sorry, it was just it's a turn around. You want to turn around?
I want to turn around.
This HDMI is killing me. Here we go. So around behind you. Yeah. I think you might be in one. Hey.
Can I see what question?
Sure.
It's something that can be solved quickly if not.
Sure.
So,
Whoa.
as I was,
Oh, careful.
as I was importing these assets for Oculus, it kind of like hangs on.
Is it just this one specifically, or does it slowly go?
Each time it's different. Like force quit each time something new. Is that something?
It just takes a long time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot of assets and
So
like
let's just wait for it.
yeah, you sometimes some laptops will take like 30 minutes sometimes to import.
Oh, okay.
It might take a while. Yeah.
So it's just.
Yep.
just wait.
Yeah. As long as it's still moving. As long as you see it change files.
No, it hangs on a certain file and hangs for like
And just out, it stays on that one
10
file.
minutes, yeah, that's what I'm.
Do I
if you
touch
do
Sure you got
anything
enough
this
space.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I'm going
Is that,
towards
is
your.
that something that's normal or
Yeah, it's weird. What version of Unity are you using?
2018?
Maybe try 2019.
Okay, so you see
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Which means
It hung up. Yeah, definitely. No, if it's changing the files, but if it's taking slowly, then it's good. But if it actually hangs up on it, then yeah, you might wanna
2019.
try 2019. Yeah, I don't know what else it could be.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, no problem.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
just curious, can
Yeah.
we use Oculus Rift also for browser-based VR, like A-frames, things like that?
I think I think it works. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it works. Yeah, A-frame. I've used A-frame before, not with Oculus, but I got it. But it does work. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
So, a quick other question. So, how do I get back into? How do I cancel that import? Is that possible to do? Because when I launch it,
Yeah, it's
it
like
forces me to
you kind of have to.
do it all over again.
Yeah, because you started importing it again, and then yeah, it's gonna force you to import.
Can I do
You should do a new project. Yeah.
And then it's fine.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
There's no way to stop it unless it processes all the files.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no problem.
Is Link available for OS X yet or no?
I have no idea. I don't know. Maybe it does.
I was looking.
I don't think VR runs that well on
No,
on,
so
on
you'd have
macOS.
to- you'd have
Yeah.
to-
Oh, you want to
have to just develop it as Android and then upload it?
try? Yeah. For Quest.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna press play for you. Wait, is it So you're actually holding the grips here. So these, there you go. And just this is the monitor, so you kind of want to be like here, yeah. So the grip is a little bit wonky with a really big object like that. You're not going to be able to really throw it that well. But if you make a fist by grabbing all the buttons, you could like push it away. So all the buttons, and you have like an index as well. So every button, and so yeah, like if you try to hold, and then there's also a grip here. So there's this button here, this one, and then there's these, and then it's a fist. Yeah. So then you have the full. And then yeah, the grip is just like the kind of the foregrip. So if you let go of all the buttons, and then it's only the one like on your like your ring finger and like your, it's all like here. So this is the grip, this is the grip. And if you let go all of them and then just grab the grip, when you're in the barrel, it should grab it.
You just tell me I've reached the minutes.
Yeah, it's I kind of don't have the bounds set up really well for this podium, but it demonstrates the purpose stuff.
So let's say you want, let's say you wanted to climb. Would you then have to create
Some grabbable
like I guess grabbable sub-concepts so that you can climb in the same way that you made the hands?
kind of, yeah. It would be a little bit of a more of a custom behavior, but there is something that I'm going to show next has like a climbing example on how to make like a climbing thing. Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, you had a question?
I mean, what about verification?
That's exactly what I was gonna do next. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what I was gonna do next. I actually haven't played with the newer one, so hopefully it just works out of the box. Yeah. So just to kind of like wrap up like the VR section, because we still have a whole AR section to go over. There's a framework called VRTK that's been out for a while. It almost got canceled, but I think the developer got bought out and funded. So it's a virtual reality toolkit. It allows you to build like pretty complex VR experiences with this kind of like sample toolkit. And it works with not just Oculus, it works with Vive, it works with all the other ones. So it's kind of like you build in one framework and then you could export to all of them. So I'm actually just gonna try it. I actually haven't played with the newer one for a while, but I'll just see if it's as easy as they say it is. So the way that it works, you download VRTK. I have it down here on the desktop, so I'm going to add it as a new project. I'm going to go to desktop here and VRTK, select folder, select version. It wants 2018, so we're going to give it 2018, and I'm going to let it like update and do whatever it wants to do here. So this is going to take a few minutes too, but again, so I'll just kind of explain what VRTK has. So a bunch of these games have been made with VRTK. They have a really great like bow and arrow system, a climbing system like this gentleman was asking. So it's literally like you just create these climbable objects. You just add a climbable script to it, and then you can just kind of grab onto it and you pull yourself up as you use the grab button. And just other things like teleportation, buttons, switches, levers, any kind of thing that you think you could do in VR. They've kind of made a nice sample set, and it's all free. So I mean, you can't beat that. It's like it's a completely free package. So let's see how long this is going to take to import. My computer is pretty fast, so I don't think it should take too long. But in the meantime, while it's doing that, I'm kind of gonna intro into the next part that we're going to be working on. So for the next part, like I said, so AR Foundation is an AR platform that targets both iOS and Android. For this class, I'm only going to be doing Android because I'm on my PC here and I don't want to switch to my Mac, as mentioned before. My favorite part about it is that I'm going to be using the same cable that I was using to plug into the Quest for Link. I'm just going to plug it into my phone instead, and then build AR to my phone, which is super cool. It's all Type-C nowadays. So you know, I think that's cool. If I was building with iOS on my iPad, I could also just plug Type-C into my iPad. So it's the same cable for Quest Link, for Android, for the Type-Cs, and now even for the iPads, they're all Type-C as well. So it's pretty crazy if you think about how far technology's come, that it's all just one connector now, or you know, one connector really does a lot of things. And then after we do AR Foundation, I was going to demo as well how to use a new AR platform, Bose AR, which is runs on these audio sunglasses and on these headphones as well. So this is like another type of wearable, and it's audio only. So there's no visuals, but what it does is, because you know the rotation of a user's head, you can create spatial audio experiences, audio cues, and then these have like an input on the side. So it's another way to kind of create XR, but audio first. So you know, imagine like hearing a sound coming from here on the left, and you look towards it, and then you can interact with that without like kind of like cluttering the field of view of the user. So pretty cool stuff. Hopefully I'll be able to get to all of it. Just make sure I'm still screen recording here. Yes, I am. Cool. All right. VRTK seems to have imported. Is this it? They changed it. There we go. So here's this. Let's see if this actually works still. Anyone use VRTK lately? Does it work still? Okay. I hope it does, because it has some really cool features. So it's loading. Okay. That's promising. Yeah, so it works. Even with Quest. That's pretty cool. Since you used the new one, I haven't played with the new one for a while. Do you know where the climbing thing is? They still have that? I think this is like, see that? So there's like a lever you can control. Make this screen bigger for everyone. You don't know if they still have the climbing thing? Probably that barn over there. They even have a zip line thing, I think. Alright, so. Alright, that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah. Yeah, I'm dead. Am I just dead? Really? Okay. Yeah, that's VRTK. Oh, I'm alive. Okay. We find the. Oh, there's the ladder. All right. Yeah. Pretty sure this works. So this is like a cube. It's a stretched cube. So I think the way, yeah, there we go. So you use the grip, and you kind of climb like this. See? There we go. Look at that. Some acrobatics right there on the ladder. Yeah, so that's... See, so if you want to do some of these kinds of behaviors, you don't have to reinvent the wheel and, you know, code all this stuff that someone's probably already made. And I'll just kind of show you this ladder component, which is the most fascinating thing to me. The ability to create climbable objects. So if you click one of these objects here, you see what that looks like? So that green bounding box is the actual grabbable area. Even though the rectangle of the ladder is thin, you want the grabbable area to be kind of around it. So it's using the collider, and then this, let's see here. It's climbable, carryable rails. Oh God, just made this like kind of complicated, didn't they? I think this entire thing is grabbable. I think even the edges are grabbable. So yeah, I don't know. They changed this a little bit, but it's pretty well documented. And you know, the whole sample is here, so you can kind of pick it apart and see how the different things work. Like this lever that you click here has an interactable, you know, event here, and then it, you know, has things that happen. Yeah, I'm not really sure how this works, to tell you the truth, because I don't really do as much VR as I used to back in the day. But I will tell you, it's a heck of a lot easier to get started now than it used to be. So if you do want to build VR, you know, and this is, again, VRTK works with not just Oculus, it works with all the other stuff. But the moment you plug in an Oculus, it knows it's Oculus and it'll do all the automatic like setup for it. If you plug in a Vive, it'll know it's a Vive, it'll do the automatic setup for it. So yeah, I mean, that's VRTK, still works, still good, has all the little building blocks that you need. But yeah, I mean, it's that easy to just integrate. As you saw, I haven't done any coding yet. It's just very basic stuff so far. All right, cool. So any other final questions on VR before I move on to AR? Yes.
Yeah. So those grab events, can you just like do an animation, make the thing, the lever?
Yeah, but then in the I think the lever itself has some sort of interactable thing that fires like an animation, but I don't think it actually does an animation. I saw that the lever, what it does is as you move the lever, the platform moves like literally one-to-one with the lever. Cool. All right, so I'm gonna put this away. Back to sleep. Turn it off. you have to turn this thing off. If you don't turn it off in here, it's like heats up and dies in your pack. You have to turn it off. Don't forget to do that. I always forget to do that. All right. Oculus has been put away, and comes out my phone. All right. So now we're gonna do AR Foundation. So the way that this works, now let's create a new project. Just gonna close this. Don't need this anymore. Don't need Oculus anymore. Everything gone. So new project. Let's. I'm gonna use 2019 still. So I'm gonna do new project with the drop-down box here to select which version of Unity. And I'm gonna call this AR Foundation Beginner. Okay. So now I'll explain some of the first steps here. So to find out how AR Foundation works, you just Google, guess, AR Foundation. First doc shows up from Unity. It tells you what you have to do. You have to, basically use the package manager to install AR Foundation. So the AR Foundation package. And then you have to select a package for iOS or for Android. So iOS is ARKit, Android is AR Core. Now back in the day, I keep saying this word back in the day, this was like a year ago. It's like you had ARKit was its own Unity plugin and AR Core was its own Unity plugin, and they were completely different. But then Unity kind of got tired of that whole thing, and they were like, let's make a unified one framework for AR, and then whether you build for iOS or for Android, it'll handle all the stuff automatically. So it's been simplified even further. There is also Vuforia, which I'm not going to go over in this class. I've actually done Vuforia classes before. It is a great solution for AR, enterprise AR, whether it's you're doing stuff on HoloLens, whether you're doing stuff on mobile. It's paid, but it's amazing. I know they have programs too for developers, and Vuforia Chalk is like it's not that new anymore, but it was. It allows you to annotate in space, like for people, like if they're doing some training or something, you can like literally draw for them in AR space. They hold their tablet up and someone's just annotating for you. Pretty cool stuff. And it does really good image recognition and stuff like that. But we're not going to be touching any of that. We're actually going to be doing like raw Unity AR. But yeah, that's like the main other like AR platform. There's also Easy AR. It's worth a mention. If you want to do something like Vuforia, but you don't want to pay for Vuforia, you could use Easy AR, which it's made in China. They're like, it works really well, but it's it's good. It really depends. You can look at all the different alternatives and see whatever works for you the most. But I'd say that's probably all the AR platforms. ARKit, AR Core, Vuforia, and Easy AR for visual AR. Then for audio AR, that's another story. So since we're doing Android, I'm going to be installing AR Core XR plugin. So now how do we do that, right? So I'm back in my Unity, empty project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Window, Package Manager. Inside Package Manager, these are my installed packages. Now Package Manager is a fairly recent addition to Unity. It allows you to kind of have some of these reusable packages kind of like load in as packages, not as like assets. You're not loading them in manually and installing them. You're installing them directly from Unity, and it's all version managed. And if you don't know what any of that means, it doesn't matter. It's just basically, it's like an installer built into Unity that has some of these features. It's got a lot of stuff in here now, but we're going for AR Foundation. It's right there. So I'm going to click that, and then on the bottom right, install. So I'm going to install it. It's going to do its thing. It's worth mentioning that when you want to do AR or any kind of mobile application in Unity, make sure when you're installing Unity, when it asks you for components, just check Android, iOS, depends on what you're working on. But just make sure if you're working with Android and Unity, when you're installing Unity, make sure you check off Android module. You're going to need that. If you don't have that, or if you forgot to check that off, which You'd be surprised how many people do. You can always add it later by going into your Unity hub and going to installs and then click your version of Unity, and then right here the three dots, add modules, and then see there's iOS, build support, tvOS, Linux, Mac, whatever, but I don't want any of that. Just so you know. So you need that if you want to do this. You need to have Android in your Unity. So AR Foundation installed. Then I want AR Core, which is the Android one. So I'm going to install AR Core. Give it a moment.
Can I install both of them, AR4 and ARK at the same time?
Yes, you can. That's the beauty of the package manager. Things won't conflict. So if you want, let's say for iOS you're doing ARKit. If you're doing Android, you're doing AR Core. If you're doing both, you can install both, and then your app will work on both, but it will only work on both if you have a Mac. That makes sense? Because Mac and iOS, they don't like you developing iOS with anything other than a Mac. One of the other reasons why I'm not doing iOS as well here, because like Xcode, they just updated it recently, and it's a little bit of a nightmare when Xcode updates and getting the right versions and stuff. I didn't want to spend like 30 minutes up on stage getting the right versions and stuff, but the other reason too is I can actually screen share my Android. So I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna start doing stuff. All right. So AR Foundation, AR Core installed. Next thing that you want is you wanna Google AR Foundation samples. Which is gonna bring you to a Unity GitHub. So this is the official AR Foundation samples made by Unity. So again, we're going for samples. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just download the sample projects that are already made. The stuff is already made. Most of the stuff that you want to do, and just modify the samples and get them to do what you want them to do. So here's the AR Foundation samples. All you have to do is click here, clone or download if you don't know how to use GitHub, and just download the zip file, and that's the entire AR Foundation samples Unity project. Now I actually already have it downloaded, so I'm not going to download it again. It's right here. It looks like that. It's a zip file with a folder inside. I'm going to pull that folder out, and there it is. So here's what I'm going to do, right? So instead of actually, I made a mistake. You're not supposed to make a new project. You're supposed to open the samples as a project. So I'm actually going to close this. And since they basically give you an entire project, so you just open it as a project, and then everything's all set up for you. So you have your projects view open. You click add. And I'm just going to extract it again. Actually, let's just gonna rename it because I extracted it earlier, so I don't want to like overwrite. All right, so I'm gonna navigate to that folder I just extracted, and then in here is AR Foundation samples master select folder. Okay, there it is, and I'm gonna select this version of Unity 2019 or 2019.2.14, and make sure I have Android on that. I do. And wait, where did it go? Oh, I hate when it does that. Select folder, Unity 2019, Android, all that set up. Click. Last modified 12 days ago. Funny. Confirm. All right. So it's gonna import all the AR Foundation samples. In the meantime, while I'm doing that, I'm just going to show you something that you should do on your phone before you're ready to do any of this stuff. Okay, so here I go. So I'm going to open up Visor on my computer. Plug this in here. always allow. So when you plug your phone in, you want to select and tell it all to allow everything. Come on. I just had it. Come on. Sometimes you have to like jimmy the USBs a little bit and move them around. I don't know why it does that. Come on. I'm gonna open the Visor app on my phone. Maybe that will do it. Another thing you can do, if for whatever reason your device doesn't show up, now this is a little bit of a pain, but you have to find your platform tools. And this is if you have Android Studio installed. This is a very Android thing. You don't usually need to do this. I'm only doing this because I want to mirror my screen and just kind of show you what I'm doing. But your Android SDK is installed in App Data, Local, Android SDK Platform Tools. And on Mac, it's in another place that I can tell you later if you ask me. I can find it. But I'm just gonna open up Command Prompt and pull Android Debugging Bridge and just do devices. And I want to see, yeah, so it needs to run the server. I don't know why it doesn't, yeah, now it sees the device. So, yeah. Why did I have to do that, right? Because this guy is also Android. So, but yeah, it was a different version of Android and it kind of messed with it. So yeah, like if you're switching from Quest to AR Foundation development or whatever, you might have to jimmy some things around. If you're not doing that, if you're just sticking to one, you shouldn't have to do that little extra step. So, and the way that I know that is he said ADB server version 40 doesn't match this client 39 killing, and then it starts it again, and then there's my device that shows up. There's my device that shows up in Visor, and I'm going to show you what you want to do here, right? So, this is my phone screen mirrored. There it is. So, what you want to do is you want to go to your settings in your Android, and you want to go to like System and About Phone. Now, every phone is different. It has this in a different place, but typically it's in somewhere like System and About. And then see here where it says build number. You want to click build number like 7 or 8 times. But see, for me it says no need, you're already a developer. So what that does is that enables developer options on Android. It's just how Android does it. Oops. So yeah, you basically go to build number and you press it a bunch of times. You become a developer. Then you go back and you can find your USB debugging. Oops, can't spell. USB debugging, and you make sure that that's on. It's off by default. Once you turn that on, you reconnect your phone. Your phone will ask you something like, do you want to allow this computer permissions to modify or change files on your phone or something like that. You want to do it like always allow, and then your computer will be able to communicate with your phone, and then Unity will be able to push directly to your phone on experience. So I have my screen mirrored. I don't need that mirrored right now. I'm actually just gonna close Visor, and we'll come back to Visor in a second. So back to Unity, which is still importing. Yes. Let's just let it do that. It's gonna take a few minutes. Time for a 2-3 minute break. Everyone good so far? Not going too fast? Everything makes sense? Let me know if something doesn't make sense, or if you have any extra questions. You can always also reach me after by email or on Meetup. On Meetup's great. I answer usually pretty quick on Meetup because it just goes there. Oh, look, it's done. Sorry, can't take a break. I'm kidding. Yes, wait, yes.
So we're doing Android, but so ARKit and AR Core, like Android and OS, are they going to have similar setup and structure in terms of how the plugins work within Unity? Or
So,
are they...
in theory, it should be exactly the same, but there's some features, I think, like face recognition that only works on ARKit, for example. It'll say in the documentation like what's the same and what doesn't work on one and works on the other. But the idea is, yeah, they want it to be unified, and the setup is you only set it up once, and then you just deploy, and you don't have to change anything. In theory, that's how it should be. In practice, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Usually, I just worked on a AR project recently that did both, and there was a slight difference with Android, but not much. So we have our AR Foundation samples set up. So let's start with a simple one, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to where is this? Scenes, image tracking. Let's do a good old. So open up the image tracking scene. So the image tracking scene has a few components here: AR session origin and AR session. AR session origin is kind of like the main thing you want to look at in an AR camera. So there's a bunch of like complex things happening here, but basically the premise is simple. You use the device's camera, and it does image recognition on the camera, and then it tries to do AR. Now in this specific example, we're actually going to be tracking these markers. So we're going to be looking at these markers. When it detects these markers, it'll put some AR on top of it. Now in this instance, it'll actually just put an actual like image, the actual image of the marker. We'll put it right on top of the marker. Just kind of like place it. So let's go ahead and do that, right? So this scene, not going to touch anything. I'm just going to leave it as is. I only imported what I have from GitHub. Still haven't touched anything. I'm going to go to build settings. I'm already in Android. I'm going to find this scene. So it's like image tracking right here. I'm going to check it on. So in Unity, the scenes that you can build are all kind of put in this build settings, file build settings. So if you don't have a scene in here, then it won't actually build to your app. So currently there's no scene selected, and I selected the one that I want. So image tracking. Now, a quick way to check if your Android device is actually connected is here in Run Device. Your Android device should show up. So Google Pixel 2 XL shows up for me. I'm going to select that, build and run. It's going to ask me to save an APK file somewhere on my computer. I'm going to save it. I'm just going to call it test. Now, for those of you that don't know, APK is just an Android installation file, basically. So I'm going to save that. So it's going to do two things. It's going to build an Android app, and then it's going to push the Android app directly to my phone over the cable. Okay? So we're going to wait for it to do that. That takes a few minutes usually. It's like watching paint dry. Sometimes you're just like, you're just waiting for it to import, like, yes.
The videos you're gonna upload is gonna be edited at all, like the talks and everything?
Nope, not edited at all. I'm just gonna slap it together and just put it up. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's great.
Yeah, I wish I had the time, honestly, to go in and edit my YouTube videos, but I just kind of like, I just put up the recording for people to skim through if they want to find a specific part. Don't allow it through your firewall because it works without it, so why allow it? I don't know why it wants through the firewall, because it doesn't need it. It's so silly. So you can click cancel on that if you get that. Only Windows users get that, though. So building Gradle project. Gradle is like, don't quote me on this, I think that's the compiler. Probably not, I don't know. copying APK package. That means it did it. So there it is, and it's running, and I'm gonna present my visor. Alright, so there is my app on my phone. Now what I'm gonna do is just gonna move this here so you can see it. I'm gonna take this image marker and I'm gonna look at it with my phone, and see that? It detected it. Now, cool feature, look, if I put the image down, it's still there, still in AR. Even though the image isn't there, it's obviously not gonna keep it there perfectly. Stop locking. But the moment I pull it up, see, if I move this image, it'll move the marker with it. See that? So it's tightly tracked. You could actually pull up more than one marker as well. Wow, I think it followed it as it was minimizing. That was impressive. So yeah, like it could do two at the same time as well. 4 or more even. So you can do actually multiple image triggers at the same time. Stop locking. Sorry, I have to like disable the lock, but you get the gist of it. Super easy to just pull in and build, and just build it straight to your phone. If your phone is AR Core or AR Kit capable, it should be good. And you can read that like on Google's website or on Apple's website, which one is. Pretty much most modern phones support AR. And if you do not, if your phone isn't supported, or your tablet or whatever isn't supported with this stuff, Vuforia might support it. So just a heads up. Now let's try another sample, right? So let's do, I think object tracking might be a little bit of a stretch. Anyone have a cube lying around? I'm kidding. So let's do plane detection. So I believe plane detection, what it should do, now I wish that this actually you could just press play in the editor and preview it with your webcam, but you can't. You have to build each time. So for plane detection, I think this one will do, it'll detect the floor, and then you'll be able to place things on the floor. So let's do, or maybe we could do something better. It's a good one in here. It looks good. Like simple AR. What's that? All right, let's see. So it's really fun to kind of play around with these sample projects and see what kind of stuff they have. Usually you can find something very cool, and you know, surprisingly, you can actually take some of this stuff and just change it up a little bit, put your own assets in, and you got an AR app, like in under an hour, or you know, maybe a little bit over an hour, depends on the setup. But again, far easier than it was just a couple of years ago to set up something as complex as AR. So gonna let it do its thing. I have high hopes for this simple AR scene. I actually, to tell you the truth, for AR Foundation, I've only been playing with the image tracking, because we did, I worked on Arcadia Earth, the show here in New York, which uses a lot of image tracking, and it's all based with AR Foundation. So it's an interactive, like sustainable art exhibit. You go through it and you scan markers, and you learn about how to save the environment and that kind of stuff. So all using image tracking, all using AR Foundation, and all using Unity. All right, so my app has been built. Actually, it doesn't take too long to build, which is nice. It's running. I'm gonna fire up my visor so you can all see what I'm doing. I actually don't know what I'm supposed to be doing in this app. I think like, yeah, but I just want to see if I can actually get it in here. So I saw a point cloud a second ago. Picking up points. I don't know if y'all can see that. It's like, see, it's picking up the points. I don't know why it's not. It should be generating a point. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So you kind of, when you do AR, you kind of have to like pan a little bit, kind of like left and right like that. And you see like how this one, it kind of goes into the table. Now, I saw a sample in here that does plane and occlusion. I'm sorry, it's just my cable's a little wonky. There was a sample in there that actually does occlusion. So it'll actually occlude. So see, now it detects this is a table. See? That's a table. That's a floor. If I get down on the floor, you can see that. It's a floor. So it knows that. And then see, I can place these objects on the floor. Or I can take this, put it on the table. There it is. Now it's on the table. I look away. I look back. It's still on the table where I left it. Kind of.
We can't see.
Oh, crap. Sorry. Yeah. See, it's on the table. It's on the floor. It's on the table. I look away. I look back. It's still there. I move around. It's still kind of on the table, or what it thinks is the table. Put it on my laptop, for example. Okay. So it's trying to figure it out. Obviously, it's not a perfect science. But, you know, it's plane detection. You got a floor, you got a table. There it is on the table. There it is on the floor. You go down. You see that? Yeah. So, yeah, that's AR. And obviously, you can look at the samples there. Do your own kind of, you know, AR behavior, whether you want to do something with plane detection, with image tracking. I'd say image tracking is probably the most useful one. And then a combination of both is also very interesting, where you trigger something with an image and then leave it in space, even when you're not looking at it. So at Arcadia, we do that a lot. You look at an image, and then once you unlock it, you look around, and there's stuff happening all around the room, and you can walk through it and everything. So as you can see, I was actually able to walk around and go down on the floor and look at the table. So it's full 3D point cloud that it's scanning, and it's only just using one camera. It's just using the camera, nothing else. There's no depth sensor. It's just your phone. So that's the power of AR Foundation. Okay. Any other questions on AR Foundation? And yeah, iOS works exactly the same way, except the build process. You don't build directly to your phone. You build an Xcode project, and then from Xcode you build to your phone. But it's pretty much the same thing. Okay, cool. All right. Cool. So then I'll move on to, let's see if maybe then we have another cool one. I'd say just, you know, just play with this one's really interesting, the Human Segmentation. There's both platforms are now trying to actually occlude people. So when you have people going in front of the AR, it'll actually like cover the AR. And there's also object occlusion now, which is also new. So when you look behind the table, it's something you're gonna have a little creature like run behind the table, and it'll actually get hidden by the table. And then when you look around, now it's there. So it's like that's all brand new stuff that works with ARKit, and I believe AR Core as well. But definitely look into that. All the latest features are supported in AR Foundation. So the idea is if you watch an Apple announcement or something like that, and they say, hey, this awesome feature is coming, you know, you could betcha that it's going to be in Unity. And it's like pretty much like 100% guaranteed it'll be in Unity. All right, cool. So on to our last one, and that's Bose AR. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about what this is, because I know the name might be a little bit confusing. So if you just Google Bose AR, so it's an audio augmented reality platform. It's the Star Wars experience that they have. So basically, it has sensors built into Bose headphones and the Bose frames, which are like audio sunglasses. And what that allows you to do is allows you to create like some interesting apps that use basically your orientation, your input in here. All of these devices have a microphone, so you do like text to speech or something like that. So, you know, activity, you know, golf shot. Golfers use like the Bose sunglasses to play golf with, because it's like kind of like frowned down upon to play golf with headphones. So I've heard. Like, people think you're not so nice when you do that. So people wear these, and then they can listen to music on this, and no one knows that they're actually like listening to music. And with an app like Golf Shot, I think what the way it works is they double tap, and then it tells them with audio the distance to the shot, and then they know like how to adjust their shot. Pair, I think, is like an interactive. Like a coach that just kind of like, it counts your sets and your reps, push-ups, sit-ups, that kind of stuff, because it has like an accelerometer built in. So all those things you could kind of like leverage using this platform, and then it works on these products and probably more to come. So show you how that works, and it works with Unity. So everything we're doing here is Unity. So I'm just gonna make a new project and call this Bose AR Beginner. Now on the Bose developer site, you'll find how to do all this stuff as well. Just go to developer.bose.com. All these platforms, everything I'm teaching you today, it's all available on the internet or on YouTube. But again, as long as you know what to look for, then you're empowered. Then you can use this information. That's what matters. But once you know what to look for, then it's easy to find the stuff. And once you see it and you see that it's easy to do, then you know it's not you're not intimidated of starting something like this. So I'm just gonna close this. All right. So the way you get started with Bose AR is you go to the asset store, just like we did with Oculus, but instead of searching Oculus, you guessed it, you just search Bose. So just search Bose. There it is, Bose AR SDK for Unity, and has all the samples and example projects and etc. I'm just going to import it and click import. Give it a little bit to do its thing. And this is going to be the spatial audio component of what we were going to run over today. I believe we went through all the topics. Unity editor, assets, materials, components, physics. Now we're doing 3D sound, VR, AR, Bose AR. All right, cool. Cool. I think we might even have time to spare. Wasn't so bad for a 3-hour lecture, right? It sounds like it would be like a long, tedious lecture. I told you it was gonna be fun, right? It's fun, it's interactive, it's visual, it's not boring coding. There's been no coding actually. That's some of my other classes. I get deep into the coding stuff. That's also really interesting if you're into that. So I'm just gonna clear the console here, because if you can clear the console, if there's an error and you can clear it, that usually means that it's not a fatal error if it allows you to clear it. So we have a new folder called Bose in here. So the way that this works, you go to Bose, Wearable, Modules, Connection. Now the first thing that I want to do is I want to modify my Unity editor a little bit. So what's cool about Unity is you could take any component in here and drag it around and set up your environment any way you want. So I'm actually going to take the game view and I'm going to pull it into the right panel of the project view here, and I'm going to kind of make it look almost like a mobile device, like that, because I'm kind of doing mobile development here. So this is going to be like my preview window for what it's going to look like. This is my scene, this is my game. So again, we're in Bose, Wearable, Modules, Connection, and then Prefabs, and then the first one, Wearable Connect UI Panel. Okay, so what this one does, this automatically helps you connect to available Bose products over Bluetooth. So the way it works, you build an app to your mobile device, you pair your Bose headphones or frames with Bluetooth, and then what this menu is going to show you is all of the available devices, and then you select one. So that's what the Wearable Connect UI panel does. And it's just a prefab that Bose gives you. Now, next thing to make this work is you want to go to Game Object, UI, and then Event System. So you're creating an event system which actually allows you to click something in here. So you're going to have some UI elements, and anytime you do any UI stuff in Unity, it automatically comes with an event system. Any buttons, sliders, and etc. And yeah, so I'll show you how that works. So Wearable Connect UI panel, event system, and then the last one that we want is we want to create an empty game object. And I'm just going to rename this one to Wearable Control. And then here in Add Component, I'm going to clear this search. And I see there's a Bose category here. So I'm going to go to Bose, Wearable, and then Wearable Control. So what Wearable Control does is basically it allows you to control your app using any of these Bose wearables. So the only thing I'm going to change here is Editor Default Provider. From Debug, I'm going to go to USB Provider. So then inside, say like your Bose frames, you will find USB cable. That's the charging cable that comes with the product. You take your charging cable out and you connect it to your computer. And that will connect directly to Unity, which allows you to develop with it. So here's the cable. It's like a little magnet strip on the side of the glasses. Just gonna connect it like that. And then I'm gonna take these glasses and just connect them to my computer. There we go. And that will work and connect, but currently we don't have any data coming in, or we're not doing anything with the wearable. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and let's do something really simple. So I'm just gonna take a cube. Oh, sorry, scene. So I'm gonna make I'm gonna make a cube, let's say, and I'm gonna put that to 0, 0, 0, 0. There's the cube. If you're wondering what this white thing is, that's this UI. I don't know why Unity does that. It just makes the UI this really huge thing in the scene. You see that? I don't know why it does that. Don't ask me. It's just how it is. So, but you won't see that when you press play. So the cube is there, and then let's say I want this cube to rotate with my head. So if my head rotates, I want the cube to match the rotation of the head. So I just click my cube, I go to Add Component, I go to Bose, Wearable, and then there's a rotation matcher. And you can change the update interval, let's say 40 milliseconds, and let me press play. So I'm going to press play. Actually, let me just make this a little bigger so you can see it. So this is what the app would look like on your phone. There it is. It shows up in the menu. I click it. I hear it powering up. Connected, and there it is. So as I rotate my Bose frames, the cube rotates with it. So now you can do some pretty interesting things with this. Namely, if you know the orientation of a person's head, you can create spatial audio. So you can play sounds virtually or augment sound around the user. Now let's try and do that, right? So the first thing, instead of doing the cube, I actually want to show the Bose AR SDK has like the 3D models of the devices themselves. I'm actually going to go to the modules. There's a model loader in here, prefabs, wearable model loader. See, there's a few models in here. See that? So these are all the different products that work with it. So what the model loader does is it automatically detects what you have connected, and it will display that model. So if you have headphones connected, it'll display headphones. If you have frames connected, it'll display frames. So wearable model loader, I'm going to create a parent object to parent it to. So I'm going to call this wearable parent. And I'm going to scale the wearable parent 40 by 40 by 40. The reason is because everything in Unity is 1 Unity unit is equal to 1 meter. So all of the 3D models that Bose provides are actually to real world scale. So that'll be like really tiny in Unity units. It will be very tiny because like I said, 1 is equal to 1 meter, and now this is like a fraction of a meter. So it will be like 0.0 something. So I'm just multiplying it by 40, and then my wearable model loader, I'm going to pull this wearable parent into the model parent transform, and then what it'll do is it'll take the 3D model of what I have connected and it'll parent it to that wearable parent, and that will scale it up by 40. So it'll be like nice and big in our scene. And then where I had the cube and the rotation matcher, I don't want the cube anymore. I'm going to actually rotate the parent. So I'm going to put a rotation matcher on the wearable parent. And now when I press play, there it is. And there's the glasses, and they're kind of like mimicking a little bit of my rotation. Now imagine this is like the person's head that's wearing these glasses. So what we want to do is we want to typically, like in XR, when you're developing, your camera is your listener. So your camera has an audio listener component. Wherever the camera is, that's usually your viewpoint. So that's where your ears are, your left and your right ear. Now in this demo, the camera is kind of behind our glasses, looking at our glasses. So we want our ears to be on the glasses, not on the camera in this instance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually disable the audio listener from the camera, and I'm going to click my wearable parent, and I'm going to add an audio listener there. So now my audio listener is in front of me. It's like it's on the glasses. So as the glasses turn, the left and the right ear will also turn. Okay? So now I'll demonstrate this in a moment, right? So we have the listener set up. Now let's add a sound. So I'm going to create a sphere, and I'm going to use the sphere to kind of like represent like a sound in space. You can create any object. I'm just using a sphere because it's visual. So here's a sphere. I'm going to add component, audio source. So the sphere now has an audio source. You can change the value, the radius of the sound. I can like increase it a little bit. I'm going to make the sound loop. So when it reaches the end of the sound, it'll still keep playing. And then I'm going to select an audio clip. And there's a few audio clips that the Bose package comes with. So let me pick this one, for example. And let's test that out, right? So last thing, spatial blend, where it's 2D, you want to drag this to 3D. And that now makes it a full 3D audio. Now 3D audio is completely built in to Unity, and it uses the frame of reference of the listener. So if you have an audio playing and it's on your left side, you'll hear it out of your left ear. And as that audio moves in space, you'll hear it panning around, right? So I'm going to demonstrate that right now. So my sound is currently coming through my Bose frames, but I'm actually going to play it here. Now this is going to be very subtle But I'm gonna try to see if we can get it to work, right? Do you hear that? So I'm panning it between the two speakers. Now it's here. Y'all hear that? It's subtle, but it's actually a lot more pronounced in here. So if you actually play it through here, and you wear these, you can actually hear it. So now I hear it on my left side. Now I hear it more on my right side. Now I kind of hear it like in front. So that's basically the idea. Now, of course, you don't have to actually just rotate your head. You can actually move the sound itself as well. That's the Doppler, so I can actually change the 3D sound settings, no Doppler, and then you won't have that. Doppler is like this little effect that sounds have in real life when they move fast. They kind of warp. But I never like how its Doppler sounds like in Unity, so that's just my personal preference. I just disable it. But yeah. Yeah, exactly. So some of the experiences, people use like the animation, and then they animate sounds around the user and play sequences of events. Now what's cool about the Bose frames, for example, or like the headphones, is you can actually do some simple gesture stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up their sample stuff so I can show you what it looks like. So I'm going to go to example app, scenes. I'm going to put the root, the main menu, and then in the demos I'll do let's do gesture. Okay. And then I'm going to open up the root like so. And the only thing I'm going to change here is, since I'm doing USB on wearable control, I'll go to USB. I'm going to press play. It's going to do its thing. And then I'm going to select gesture demo. Alright, so there's a few gestures built in. So like, for example, double tap like that. You can nod, and you can like shake your head like no. So you could use this to build your apps basically. So like, let's say I've seen some people do like a choose your own adventure thing, and then it's like, you know, there's an audio story playing around you, and then at some point they ask you like, you know, do you want to do this, yes or no? And you're like, no. Or like, no. You know, and then the app plays like that without you having to have the visuals. It's audio feedback, and then this is your input. So on the right here, sorry, I think I might have, yeah. It's like a little bit of a solid double tap, and that also works with the headphones. It's the same concept, but obviously with the headphones it has noise canceling, so it's a little bit more like immersive. But with the glasses, it's great because it's open ear, so it almost kind of feels like the sound is around you, because it's not actually clogging up your ear. You can still hear people talking to you and stuff, but yeah, the sound just kind of plays like into your ear. It's not bone conductive, it's open ear, but it's directing the sound like into your ear, but it's not closing your ear, so you can still ride your bike or, you know, whatever, play golf without looking like you know, an inconsiderate person wearing headphones. But yeah, any questions so far? Anything? Yes.
Would it be possible to make these classes proximity based, so as you're approaching something and volume can fade in?
So if you combine it with something like AR Foundation, and you can use as the phone's camera to move around the room, yes. And then if you use beacons, some developers use Bluetooth beacons to measure distance from a beacon. That's another way to do it. Yeah.
When you say beacon, I'm sorry,
It's a Bluetooth beacons. It's just like a piece of hardware. The way beacons work, it's like a little rubber thing like this. It has a battery in it.
calculate the distance between
you can calculate the signal strength, like using Bluetooth. So if you have multiple beacons, you can do a triangulation algorithm. And then the beacons, like usually they're like the battery lasts like 2 years. Put them on a wall somewhere, and they just broadcast. Like museums use them, stuff like that. Yeah. Anyone else? Any questions? On any of the stuff, not just on this. Anything so far. Or, how many people here feel like they've learned something today and inspired to do some XR? Yeah? Awesome. That was a pretty good raise of hands. All right. Well, yeah, there's some time to spare. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves. You know, take your time. I'll give you back the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for coming out. This was a great turnout. Yeah, awesome. That's it. That's the lesson. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, if you need to reach me, meetup's great. Yeah, just shoot me a message through there. Yes, sir.
Do you mind if I demo the class?
Absolutely.